I'm Allie. I came out after 20 years of marriage and I have 3 kids.
I'm Melissa and I have 2 kids and I came out at 37 after an 11-year marriage.
This podcast is about coming out later and the struggles and victories that come with it.
When coming out feels like the end of the world, but it's really just the beginning.
This is the Lesbian Chronicles. Welcome to the Lesbian Chronicles, where
Hi.
we both have big glasses on.
I know. Well, I don't really like wearing my contacts as much anymore. I don't know if that's like an age thing,
Yeah,
but I've stopped wearing them. I probably only wear them like 2 days a week, 3 days a week now.
I can't see at all to read anymore without these glasses on, or like some form of glasses on. I was just on vacation and I had these glasses and sunglasses on top of them.
Oh my God.
Trying to like
Jesus.
read outside.
I have to have something on all the time, or I literally can't see.
I have a question though for our audience regarding, I looked for a book and I was like really into, like, to me, a book can like make your vacation or like wreck your vacation. And
Jesus, it's a lot of
I
pressure
know,
on
well,
both.
I was in New York before I left for this like girls trip where I was going to be at the beach. And I had my 20-year-old is like an avid reader. And so she was like just trying to like pick books that she thought I would like. And she did pick me out a book that I became completely engrossed in on this trip. Like I got lost in it. I love it. I'm not finished with it, but it's called
What is it?
Women. It's
Three
called
Women?
3 Women, I think. But as I'm reading, it's a bestseller. Like it's probably a lot of people loved it. But anyway, as I'm reading it, I'm there with my straight friends and they're talking about how, because I was saying there's a lot of sex in this book, and they were talking about 50 Shades of Grey and like how that was like
Oh yeah.
thing, like it was like real for them, that it like made them want to have sex with their husbands. And so we started talking about like books like that like kind of get you going. And I couldn't think of any books that are like lesbian books, fiction, that are written well, that I would feel that way about. Or maybe I just haven't read any. I know there's that author that Tipping the Velvet and like those old books that everybody talks about, but I wondered if there were like any new. Sometimes I'll do Audible with lesbian fiction, but they're not like bestseller, kick-ass writing books. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
I have no suggestions for you whatsoever.
Yeah, but I
like,
bet some of our audience, we've got some smart readers out there.
Yeah, totally. Every book I read is like self-help.
I know. I do a lot of that, but I didn't want to do that on my vacation.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I wanted like a good book. I mean, they're all good, but I wanted something that was like I'd just get lost in.
Yeah, that's not me, by the way. That's the dog. If you can hear the grunting.
It's not you grunting.
It's not me grunting. It's my emotional support dog that's decided that she needs to try to bite me.
All right. Well, moving on, I think what we're going to talk about today is a question that someone emailed us about that I thought was really interesting, which is they haven't come out yet, or they've kind of partly come out, but haven't fully come out. And they're thinking about how they can tell their job. Like, how do you transition from this married woman that everybody knows you as this married woman to now I'm at work and I'm this different person than you knew before, and like trying to get up the courage to start to breadcrumb that this is a different thing. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I just wrote an article for
yeah. Why don't everyone listen? Just write an article for CNN.
Just come
done. You want to just get it done? Just call CNN and just go ahead and write an article.
Like I just have a way of just grabbing the megaphone and
just grab the megaphone and announce it. I think for me, I guess I wasn't working at the time, so I don't remember that. But I had other instances similar where it's like you're on the soccer field with your kids and everybody knows you as this straight woman married to the guy. You've got this family, everybody knows your family, and then you're something different. And I think there is like an awkwardness to that.
Yeah, I do remember feeling that, and kind of like how to approach the subject. I remember really just at first being uncomfortable with telling people that I was even getting divorced just because that
Hmm.
felt like a scarlet letter,
It is,
like,
yeah, so shameful.
and usually people wouldn't really ask why we were getting a divorce, so I didn't have to like dive too into it. Um, but I think there was also part of me that kind of like didn't mind sharing about the gay thing, like, and I would just typically word it with like that I'm questioning or that I'm just going to date women now. Like I wasn't
Yeah,
putting any kind of like label on it. And I think that was kind of helpful for me personally to not like
yeah,
take this hard stance of like, I'm a lesbian. Like, I can't even imagine saying that back then. That would have like,
I know.
I would
That
have
would have
crawled
felt
into my
really
shell.
hard, right? And I guess too, like one of the things that I think would give me solace now versus 5 years ago when we did it, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, is that this generation, for whatever reason, doesn't seem to care and doesn't seem to label it as anything. Like I've told you, my children, not my son, but my daughter has dated both.
Hmm.
Like there's, and all her friends are the same. They
And they don't
don't,
label it.
there's no
She's not
label.
like,
It's like
I'm
she might have a
bisexual,
date.
pan, whatever.
No, there's like, I might have a coffee date with this woman. And then at night, I'm meeting that guy I was dating. And then whatever. I mean, the majority of their circle. I don't know if that's
Hmm.
true for everyone, but I would say that that's my experience now with anyone who's 18 to and on.
Yeah, well, I
Like they
guess we
just
should also add the asterisk of like they're growing up in a major
a
city where
totally
it's
different. Yeah, they are growing up
liberal.
in a major city, all true. But I
Yeah.
think they're also in college with people that aren't, and
Hmm.
they're all doing the same thing. Like there is no, it doesn't seem to be that there's any rule around that. So it's like it is seemingly getting easier, I guess is my point.
Well, it kind of makes me wonder. I'm like, will we not have labels in like, 50, 75
Yeah.
years? Like,
Like, is it just you do whatever you want to do? Maybe I meet a man and I fall in love with him. Maybe I
mhm.
don't. Maybe I meet a woman and I fall in love with her. It does make more sense, like that you would just fall in love with the person.
And takes away the restrictions of it
Yeah.
too.
Right. So I thought that's one thing that I thought should bring people a little bit of reassurance is that it
It's
doesn't have to be this thing where, oh, I'm gay. It can more just be like, oh, I'm dating, and then just let it be a surprise that it's Catherine instead of
mhm.
Jonathan.
Yeah. I guess it's kind of like we're often the ones that are placing all the weight on it.
Right.
It feels scary to us, but then like outsiders, like I never had anyone just outright be like, ew, like what? Like have any kind of
Yeah.
like negative reaction. And I think I like in some instances kind of expected that. Um, I think more than anything, it was just kind of surprise sometimes.
Right.
Sometimes. Some
Right.
people were
Right.
like, oh yeah, yeah, I can see you dating women.
Right.
Well,
Well, I think like I was trying to think of things that maybe would help kind of give people the feeling that they can do it. And one of the things that I read a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson that I thought was really cool. And I've thought about this in my own life lots of times, but it kind of applies to this. But the quote is to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. And that's true with everything. I even think about like growing up, what my parents encouraged me to be. I remember them encouraging me to go to college and get a degree that would allow me to take care of babies. That
mhm.
was their main thing. It wasn't how much money can you make, it was pick a career that you can take care of your babies.
Like you
Come
can work and
home,
still raise your
work and
kids.
still raise your kids, or don't work and go back to work. Like
Yeah.
they were very into that. And I think that was my kind of guiding light through education is like, what can I do that I can do both things? And so I think you have to like Oprah says, the happiest people know what they want. And most people don't. They can't even identify what it is that they want. So it's
Hmm.
like, I think part of getting excited around this new identity of who you're going to be is think of it as like this greatest accomplishment. The world wants you to be straight. It does. Everything is set up that way. People assume you're straight unless you tell them you're gay. So it's like you're led, the movies you watch, all of it is just pushes you into that flow of life. So it's
Hmm.
like I don't know, like to go against that and show up in your job, the soccer field, whatever, is something that's not that, is kind of like, God, you're a badass. What an
Yeah.
accomplishment to swim upstream and do what you choose to do versus just falling into autopilot and doing what's expected.
Yeah. And I think it's a perspective thing because like sometimes like if I go somewhere around where I live and I'm definitely like the only gay person there, it's like I definitely feel like kind of like the odd man out sometimes, you
Yeah,
know?
right.
But like the way that you're saying, it's like that's a different perspective of like from being the odd man out. Like you're the
It's
unique
more
one.
like, yeah, I'm the unique one. I'm the one that won the race. I'm the one that, 99% lost, the 1% won. So it's like it's sometimes cool to be the the odd one. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And I guess I feel like that's one thing that maybe could motivate you is to show up at your job and you don't have to make some big announcement, but maybe it's little announcements of like, I'm going on a date, and you drop this breadcrumb and then let people's curiosity dictate how much how much comes out, I guess
Hmm.
is a good way to put it.
Yeah. But you know what's kind of interesting? There's a story circulating right now about, I want to say it was either a teacher or a principal, and I can't remember. I want to say maybe in Alabama that showed
Right.
a picture of her wife to someone, to a coworker, and it's like now being shuffled around at her job to like a different school and all this stuff, and like it's pretty obvious she's kind of like being like ousted.
Ostrich, yeah.
And it's that whole like don't say gay thing. So I was asked her to like be careful. Like if you're, it's wild to me that we like moved backwards. A few years ago I would have said like, oh no, like you shouldn't worry about that kind of thing. But I would worry about that, like losing your job, that potential of happening. So think about that part before you go announcing your queerness in the workplace. I do remember having that feeling of like I did feel proud of myself and like where I was,
Yeah,
what I was doing, and I wanted to share it with my coworkers, you know? And
right. And I
so I
think there's
can,
a unique curiosity. There's a unique curiosity of people that's, I appreciate it when it's coming from a genuine place. Like I appreciate it when it's a curiosity around how did you get to this decision, or who, what happened that you finally decided to do it. Like I can tell the difference between a gawker and even this week on my girls trip, these women know me well, but there's still a curiosity around to them about me. They love me. And I guess like I feel like too, like in your workplace, obviously people don't love you, but if they're genuinely curious about who you are, then I appreciate that.
yeah. And if they're asking like appropriate questions too,
Right, right.
um, I think that sometimes that's another like little questionable thing is I've encountered this more with men in like bar alcohol drinking
Yeah,
settings where
gawkers.
men feel like they have permission to ask you all the questions, like intimate questions, and it's just like I used to kind of like entertain it in the way of like feeling like, well, I'm just going to educate them and I'm a good person to do this because I have the patience to do so. um and then I would also include like, just so you know, like this isn't like you can't just ask people this stuff. But now I feel less so that way, like don't ask me this stuff, like it's rude.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's so much power in that. Like I
Mm-hmm.
love when I mean I the other day, it's interesting you're saying that. Like normally we just go through life and allow people to be offensive in some way. And I think there's also power. And I've come to this power recently, but my neighbor did something rude the other day. And I literally looked him right in the eye. And I'm like, you did this the other day. It was rude. You're doing it again. And now I'm going to tell you you're rude. And I'm going to tell you you're rude in front of your wife so that she
Mm.
notices you're rude. And then you know what she said back to me? I already
What?
knew he was rude. He's completely rude. Thank you for calling him out.
Wow.
And I thought, I'm glad I did because now it's right in the open. I did it in front of my kids, and my
Yeah.
kids were like jaws dropped, but there was like a power in that. I gave him one grace to do it once. Second
Mm-hmm.
time he did it, he got called out at the farmer's market in front of everyone. And
Wow.
I promise you it won't happen again.
Mm-hmm.
And there is power to that. It's like, there's power to now I can show up in my power. of like, I'm not rude. I'm just going to assertively tell you what you just did is offensive. Don't do it
Yeah.
again. Do not do it
Yeah.
again.
Because
Um,
and even though I would tell them that that was not appropriate, it kind of made me wonder. I'm like, is this giving them permission to attempt this again with the next
yeah.
woman they meet?
And I guess it just depends on what what the questions are. But I guess the point is, like, if you're trying to encourage people to come out and do the thing, it's like these kinds of, it's okay for, if someone treats you rudely, call them out.
Yeah.
It's not, that's all, that's about them. It's really nothing to do with you.
Right. And if someone were to, you tell them that you're coming out and they ask you why and like say that you shouldn't do that and all this stuff, be like, well, I was sharing this with you because I thought you were someone I trusted and that I wanted to share this with, but now maybe I realize maybe I shouldn't have, you
Yeah.
know?
And then God, think then how they, like, to me, it's like, that's a good lesson for them. Not that you
Yeah.
have to educate these people on what's rude and what's not rude, but I think people have more power than they think.
Yeah.
And to stand up in front of a group of coworkers that are in conversation and drop that I'm going on a date, almost normalize it. Like, I don't need to tell you I'm gay. I wouldn't show up at my job and tell you I'm straight. I would just
Hmm.
tell you by showing up with my husband or
Yeah.
showing up, So to me, it's like you can tell people without telling them and
But I
let
think there's an
them.
aspect when you're getting divorced, like everybody knew that I was married before,
Yeah, right.
and like then it's like, oh, but I'm dating women now. And it did feel, yeah, a little bit
It
awkward.
does
Like if
feel,
it comes up in conversation, like, what'd you do this weekend? It's like,
yeah,
but now I don't really even think about it. Like
yeah,
I've texted my managers a few times, like when I had like, oh, my, girlfriend's mom died.
yeah.
Like I can't work next week. So, and I didn't even really think about what I was saying.
No, right. It's like
But
so
5 years
part
ago, I
of,
would have been like, God, that's weird to have to text my
I
manager that.
know, right. But I do think, like, to people coming out or trying to like get the strength to do this, to your point, like, it starts out, it gets less awkward and less awkward the more you do it. And I think the more we normalize just live your life in a way that is who you are, then it becomes, you don't really have to make a big grand statement. It's more
Hmm.
just like, you see me, you know what's happening. If you're curious about me in a loving way, ask. If you don't, want to, don't.
And you never know who's like kind of looking for someone like you to talk to.
Yes,
Like
totally.
I remember kind of looking around and being like, all right, that woman looks kind of gay. Maybe I should try to be friends with her.
Yeah,
you know?
totally. Totally. I think that's true. And I've noticed even like on my social media, like people that have commented, like people I don't even know that are gay have commented on something like affirming me. So it's like for every naysayer you have, or everyone who kind of looks at you sideways, you can feel that there's going to be somebody else who's going to affirm it. And so in the end, you're left with a group of people that affirm you versus a group of people that are kind of judging you on your life. Like, I don't know, like it's also so nice to have almost like rid yourself of those people in some way. And I know your job, you can't, but in some ways you can. Like, there are people at my office I avoid, there are people I love. Like,
Yeah.
this is life,
Well, and I was going to say, it's kind of just part of life is sometimes you have to work with people who you don't get along with.
Yeah,
And I was actually just telling my kids about that because they were saying, there's a couple kids in their class that they are annoyed by or whatever. And I was like, well, I wish I could tell you that that gets better.
right,
And, that won't always be the case, but you're going to work somewhere one day. And there's a high possibility someone's going to be there that you don't get along with, that you have to just suck it up,
right.
you know?
And what
Like,
a great lesson, especially for people who are teachers or in a position of power, to be gay, be you. Like, don't try to hide it. Don't try to not use the word she when you're out over the weekend because you don't want people to know. Here's another quote that I read that I thought was really inspiring, which is, love has no gender, compassion has no religion, character has no race. So to me, it's like, it is very similar to these other things. It's like compassion has no religion. I don't care that you don't believe in God. I still am going to help you if you're down and out. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like
Yeah.
character has no race. I don't care if you're black, white, Mexican. I don't care. Like I'm still going to show up the same. And that's your
Mm-hmm.
character. So the
Right.
same with love. It's like, I just think that it gives other people hope. And so you can take power in that to show up at your workplace, to show up in your neighborhood, to show up, wherever. It doesn't mean that you have to be the poster child for gay rights. It just
No.
means live your life in a way that's not hiding.
Yeah.
And I think most, by and large, people are over it. Even my straight, very conservative family is like literally laughing at me constantly saying, no one gives a shit anymore. Like, get over it. Like you're worried about gay marriage, you're worried about all these things. No one cares. And I think in some ways it's like I laugh and I'm like, that makes me feel good and hopeful. Because if they don't care, a lot of people don't care anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're all very, very conservative.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we live in the South, so.
Yeah, that's true. They don't, but yeah. I think though that the biggest thing is just the more you do it, the easier it gets as well. So it's like if you just go in there and get 5 seconds of courage and drop the hint, life gets so much easier. And then little by little, you're just lifting the bricks off your shoulders until you feel so much freedom.
Yeah. And like we said earlier, like don't be stuck on the terminology. Like I
Yeah,
think going in there and feeling like, well, I have to announce that I'm a lesbian now. Like
right.
that
It's like, no,
feels
you don't.
really heavy at that
It
time.
definitely, especially at work.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's no reason that you would have to do that.
And you can do subtle things that are not like
Right.
outright saying it, just wearing like a rainbow bracelet or a ring or
Yes.
something, you know?
Yeah.
So, and if
I
someone
definitely.
asks, like you can tell them.
Yeah. Or tell them I have no label. I love, I'm open to everyone.
Although
There's
I
something
feel like
really
wearing a
cool about
rainbow
that
thing, it's
too.
like most people aren't going to ask you directly. Like, I feel like most people would just ask if you're an ally or something like that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. It could be anything, right? So yeah, for people struggling with that, I guess there's like 3 layers. There's like, you come out to your family, you come out to your social circle and your friends, which feels like the easiest, and then your workplace. And I don't know, I've always thought too, like it's nice to be able to filter out like people that aren't supportive or people that are going to make your life harder. In some ways, it's like it's such a good lesson because as they leave your life, you make room for other people that are affirming and can help lift you up on this path.
mm-hmm.
And, it's not always going to be easy, but it also wouldn't be easy if you were straight
Yeah, life
or
sucks.
hiding straight. Yeah, or just hiding in a straight life.
Yeah,
Like
totally.
to
I
me,
mean, I
that's
think
equally hard.
it is. It's super heavy to just
Yes,
try to live the straight life when you know that that's not you.
right.
That's
And the
heavier to
more you
me.
do it, the more you do it, the easier it is. It's like you
Yeah.
get to a place of just, it doesn't even affect you anymore.
Yeah, like I said, it's not even something that crosses my mind anymore.
No, it very rarely crosses mine.
Yeah. I actually had some coworkers come and watch me do stand up a couple months ago. And I was like, "Oh my God. Like what am I doing?"
Yeah, they're gonna hear all this. But isn't it nice to like just live your life without having to like be different for different groups of people?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I
Yeah,
don't have to like mute myself.
no, no. And I felt that way on my trip with these women. Like these are my good friends. They love me. They're not judging at all, but they are kind of curious. But what's interesting too is like as we cross-reference each other, they're, I don't know, they have their own struggles. You know what I'm saying? So it's like their hetero life, it's not like it's just easy street for them.
I'm curious what they were asking you.
Well, post a few cocktails, one of my friends who knows me well was like digging into, were you always like, how far did it go when you were younger? Like, I'm
Mm,
curious around, did anything ever happen when you were little? Um, I don't know. These girls are like, we talk like raw sex talk. So there was a lot of questions about that with me, and they're telling me about them, like in a
Yeah.
really curious way.
Hmm.
So, but all with just the best of intentions and more just like great conversation.
Yeah.
Because women are women at the end of the
I
day.
was gonna,
Like,
yeah. I had a straight friend that was kind of like wanting me to dive in deeper on like the logistics of everything one day
yeah,
after a few drinks. And
yeah,
I just kind of I kept it pretty basic. I was like, I'm not gonna sit here and describe exactly word for word here. But I will say that this was before I was like really, really questioning. But my straight friends they confused me like when we were talking
yeah, I
about
know.
like our
Yep.
sex lives with our husbands at that time because they were all like saying how it felt like a chore and I was like yeah it does like so I just thought
Yeah.
it was normal. It probably set me back like a good couple years just being like
Right,
that's how
right.
everybody feels.
I know that did come up a little bit on my trip. So yeah, I hear that. It's like
Yeah.
sets you back. Another thing that I read that I thought this is good for teachers is I want to make sure that any young person or anyone really who is looking up to me, who sees a glimpse of who I am as a person, that they see no shame. They see pride, that I'm unabashed about the person I am.
Mm.
And I do think like as I get older, I've said this many times, but people that are very comfortable with who they are, I love hanging out with. Like they don't make me nervous. They don't make me, they're so comfortable with who they are that they become very easy for me to have conversations with, and it just flows and it goes back and forth,
Yeah.
and I'm comfortable with who I am. So it's just like this very nice communication. And I
Hmm.
think that like that's so true. Like people in general who show up just exactly who they are. There's something so beautiful about that. And especially with children watching that, they don't see you ashamed of this. Like I
Hmm.
remember when Owen, my son, who's going to college next year, I can't believe it. But when he didn't come out per se. He just at a very young age said it so matter of factly. There was no shame. And then here I am, not out yet, and thinking, what a horrible example I am to him, that I'm
Hmm.
like hiding this part of me that he so freely thinks is healthy and great.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I never wanted to be a hindrance to that because there was something so beautiful about him loving this boy at a very young age and not even thinking a thing of it.
That's so interesting to me, like when kids can make that connection at such a young age. Like, I mean, I can reflect back and think about how now I think I was gay as a child. I just didn't have words for it and didn't know what those feelings meant and all that stuff. But it's like my kids have that, and kids nowadays have the language.
Yeah.
But then again, it's like, how did they? I don't know. Like, how do they
He
know?
didn't, yeah, it's like he didn't even, or even like he would correct people. And keep in mind, Owen was with a lot of adults because he was working.
I
So
mean,
it's
is that
like,
it? Like that he kind of saw that the examples in front of him, like
maybe,
in the
maybe,
film
or I mean, I
industry?
remember someone once even acting like he was going to marry this little girl who was in the movie. And he didn't, he like sweetly was like, I'm going to marry a boy.
Mm.
He didn't
Oh.
even bat an eyelash. I mean, it was just like, oh, she's great. I love her as my friend, but
Hmm.
I'm going to marry a boy.
What's interesting to me too is I grew up doing theater and acting and stuff, much smaller scale, but like I in the theater especially, I knew a lot of gay men, a couple gay women, but I never saw them with their partners. And it's kind of like I just associated that with being alone, I think. And so that's why I was like, maybe
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
why I
That's
didn't,
interesting. Yeah.
because
Like it had a bad
they never
stigma.
talked, yeah, they never talked about their partners. I never saw pictures. They never like had a partner around, so
Yeah.
I just felt like those people were totally alone. And there was one that was my voice teacher for a good year, and I went to his apartment to take voice lessons once a week. And I never saw any pictures around that was like him and his boyfriend or husband or
Right.
whatever. So,
He felt like he couldn't.
yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. Right. I don't know, like, I do think there's something so wonderful, even like with this podcast or like the website, like we're normalizing that it doesn't, I don't know, like I want people to feel privilege around it, to flip the script. It's not
Yeah.
less than, it's not anything different. It's just, this is the same, it's different, but the same, equal, but the same.
Right. And the more people who do it and say it, the more normalized it is, you know?
Right. And so I
So,
think like my advice to anyone, which is always my advice, would be 5 seconds of courage. Like
mhm.
just go in and drop a clue. You don't have to make a
And
big announcement.
right, and it's more normal than you think,
It's
you
way more
know?
normal than
And
you
that is
think.
one thing that I know that when we met, we both felt like we were thirsting for information about late in life
Yeah, it's
lesbians.
everywhere
But
now.
now it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And I recently was asked a lot of questions about coming out later, and I was kind of like, how are we not past this?
I
You know,
know. Like, are
like
we
I was
still
really
doing this?
surprised that
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
person was asking me so many questions. And I was like, have you never met a late in life lesbian? Like, what's going on?
Right.
And she was like, no, I have. I have a lot of questions about it. Like, because this person had known that she was gay since childhood.
Like me.
Yeah. So, I
And I don't
mean,
know, maybe too, it's like late in life lesbian. Now that I am one, I guess. I feel like honestly, like that too kind of like creates, it makes me feel shame, like shame around that, like, oh, I was hiding this dirty little secret and
mhm,
now I'm telling the truth finally.
right.
It's like that's not really the case. Like it's
Hmm.
just that to me doesn't feel like it fits my
Yeah, I
story.
agree. There is like some shame around that phrasing.
Yeah, it's the secret. And now I'm going to tell you my secret. It's that
Yeah,
you can change your mind. You can go through life and decide that I don't want to be a physical therapist anymore. Now I want to do design. I don't
right.
want to do that. Now I want to do this. Like there's power in that too.
Hmm. Absolutely.
So anyway, my friend, well, anybody out there thinking of coming out or not knowing how to do it or not knowing where to start, I hope this helps, but mostly you don't have to make some big sweeping proclamation.
Hmm.
You can do it at your pace.
Do it at your pace.
Yeah,
Don't feel like you have to hop on social media or write an article.
you can do that, but you
You
don't have
can.
to. Yes. All right, my friend. Well, enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Want to support the Lesbian Chronicles podcast? Rate us and write a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify.
We love listener feedback. If you'd like to share your story, email us at melissaandallie@gmail.com. That's Melissa, MELISA, and Allie, ALLI, @gmail.com. Or follow us on Instagram at Lesbian Chronicles.